Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to MindSpeak. And it's a real pleasure to be hosting the Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation, Lilianne Ploumen. And I've spent the last 3 days reading all about Lilianne, Her Excellency. And first of all, let me welcome everybody here, the Minister, various ambassadors, all the guests that have made time to come today. I'm deeply grateful. The Minister for Foreign Trade and Development has an extraordinary CV, and I'm sure one of the questions is going to be around the transition from your previous world into the new world. But if I can just go through it quickly for you. Master's degree in social history and strategic marketing management. In 1983, Lilianne Ploumen became a community outreach worker in an area of Rotterdam. So that's a sort of Obama-type background, isn't it? 2 years later, she joined the Institute of Psychological Market Research, working in the statistics department and as a research project leader. In 1995, she founded Ploumen Projecten, an organization specializing in market research, innovation for commercial and non-profit clients. In the same year, began working as a fundraising coordinator for Mama Cash. I wouldn't say that too much around here, otherwise. An international fund supporting women's initiatives, going on to become director of the organization from 1996 to 2001. From 2001 to 2007, Her Excellency worked for the development organization CordAid, first as head of quality and strategy, and later as director of international programs. On November 2012, Lilianne Ploumen was appointed Minister for Foreign Trade and Development Cooperation, and I hope I get the pronunciation right, Rutte Ashker Government. Is that correct?
Yep.
Close enough? Thank you. So it really is a great pleasure to be hosting you today, and we're looking forward tremendously to hear what you've got to say. I know the Minister, I've learned, has been flying all over this part of the world. I believe you've visited Mogadishu, South Sudan, Nairobi, Naivasha today, and Mombasa, I believe, which is my hometown, and this evening or tomorrow. And when I was looking through the relationship, of course, what struck me first of all was that the fact that Netherlands is the third largest export destination for Kenya. That was that stood out for me. I think that's mostly floriculture, I would imagine. And Her Excellency has a deep interest in corporate social responsibility, and I know this is one of the crucial components of your trade policy. And I'll leave you with one last thing, which I really found interesting, that 2/3 of Netherlands' GDP is below sea level. I thought that was interesting. Your Excellency, it really is a privilege to have you speak with us today, and I would like to welcome you to MindSpeak, and thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us today. Thank you.
Hi, good to be here. And very nice of all of you to come and to talk a bit about aid and trade and about the relationship between Kenya and the Netherlands and whatever other issue that is on your mind. Thank you very much for those introductions. Maybe I should do something about expectation management in terms of the Obama-type background. But you are right in saying that I've traveled extensively since I became the Minister of Trade and Aid. Last Monday, I was in Mogadishu. And for many of you, and I'm sure many of you have done so, who have followed the news on Somalia in the past years, it must come as a surprise to you if I tell you that I got stuck in the traffic in Mogadishu twice. Now, there hasn't been any traffic in Mogadishu for a very, very long time, so I consider that to be real good news. We got stuck in the traffic, which was a good thing as such, but it was also very good because it gave me some extra time and an extra opportunity to drive around Mogadishu, which was not planned at all. Obviously, we were going to go straight from the airport to the presidential palace and then back ASAP. But now we were able to drive around, and it was very, very encouraging to see how Mogadishu is, well, I would say getting re-energized. There were many, many people in the streets, men, women, and children. There were many business people in the streets selling, well, whatever you need, household items, vegetables, everything that you could buy in a city like Mogadishu. I was there with a trade delegation, 3 large companies from the Netherlands, mainly active in the maritime sector. They accompanied me to Mogadishu because they saw opportunities and they really wanted to contribute to the economic growth that we all hope will be possible in Mogadishu and in Somalia. The interesting thing, obviously, about going to Somalia, to Mogadishu with a trade delegation is not only that, you know, I was, apart from the Turkish government, who has been very active, I was the first European minister to go there for a long time with a trade mission, but it's also because it really is a symbol, I would say, of this new policy that I very much advocate, and that is about combining trade and aid. And I'm not only doing it in Mogadishu, I'm doing it all over the world, and also here in Kenya. The Netherlands, it has been said, and Kenya have a long-standing relationship. We've been very actively involved in, let me say, the development of Kenya, working with civil society, working with groups of citizens. In the earlier days, we also worked with and through the government in different sectors, on food security, on women's issues, on human rights issues. And now we see that the economy of Kenya is picking up. And it's not only Kenya's economy that is picking up. We are, I must admit, a bit jealous of what's going on in Africa now when we look at your growth figures. Because let me say first that you have figures that symbolize growth, which we don't have in my country at this time. 7 out of 10 fastest growing economies are in Africa, the coming 10 years. But those figures in itself don't paint the whole picture, obviously. Because growth and macroeconomic prosperity, as you can see it in all the charts and the graphics in The Economist and what have you, is not necessarily inclusive growth. It's not necessarily growth that all sectors in society are benefiting from. Many macroeconomics, maybe some of you here in the room, for a very long time advocated the concept of trickle down. Once you would have economic growth in all those nice graphics and data in your BNP and GDPs and what have you, then if that would be the case, then everyone could lean back because prosperity would come to all spheres of life and to all citizens. Now, I don't believe in this concept of trickle down. Economic growth as such is a good thing, but it's not inclusive automatically. We need to work to make it more inclusive. And that's what I would say triggers me to bring together trade and aid. So why I think it's important to combine the two perspectives that have for a long time been separated is one, the world is changing. As I said, 7 out of 10 fastest growing economies globally are in Africa. I was in Brazil a few weeks ago. Brazil also has been a long-standing development partner to the Netherlands. Now we were there on a trade mission, and we were not the only trade mission. The week before us, it was the French. The week after us, it was the Chinese. And the month after that, it was the Germans. And we had to work very hard to show the competitive advantage of my country, of the Dutch entrepreneurs, to Brazil. We are not the choosers anymore in that respect. We're the backers. And that is a really caters for a change of mindset in my country. So trade and aid go together. One, because the world has changed. Two, because inclusive growth does not happen in itself. And for trade to be free and to be fair, you need interventions. And those interventions are about coming up with economic partnerships agreements that are fair and free. I'm sure that you've been reading about those. It's about making sure that there's an enabling environment for entrepreneurs, which also caters to the needs of smallholders and landowners who don't have any titles to their rights, to their land, but have been on that land for decades, as have their parents and their grandparents. So this enabling environment is also something which is really crucial to the trade and aid policy. And the third point would be that corporate social responsibility is at the heart of that policy, as you already mentioned. Corporate social responsibility is about bringing together, aligning, harmonizing the interests of people, of planet, and of profit. And I think Dutch businesses have been showing for quite some time now that that can be done. Many Dutch businesses are in the top lists of the Dow Jones Sustainability Index. If I look at Dutch businesses here in Kenya, and as you rightly mentioned, many of them are very active in the horticulture sector, both flowers as well as vegetables and fruits. They want to work in a sustainable way. They want to make sure that the wages that they pay are livable wages. They want to make sure that if they use the water from Lake Naivasha, they do it in a responsible and responsive way, and make sure that they make good use of all the technology that is available in terms of green economy. So we are here now on a trade mission, not a traditional trade mission in terms of only bringing along companies and people with a private sector background, but also bringing people from a public and an NGO background, because I feel, and knowledge institutions, because I feel that only in working together and only in bringing those perspectives together, we can work towards inclusive growth. Now, this is what I would call my mission for the coming years. This is also what the government, Rutte-Ascher, the Ascher part was very well. You have to work a little bit on the Rutte part. Yes, that's it. Rutte, yes, yeah. I do hope that in taking that approach, we can be pioneers also to other European countries, and that we can be pioneers in offering a partnership with countries like Kenya much more on an equal footing than we've been able to do for the past decades. So thank you very much again for being here, and I really look forward to talk with you and to answer all the questions you might have.
Thank you so much. The Mogadishu traffic.
I know,
wow.
I know, yeah.
Jealous of us, finally. Can I ask a question? You know, all this talk of corporate social responsibility, you know, it's really like the sexy topic for the big corporations now. And how do you define it? I hear so many new different interpretations. What does it really mean? Is it just your workforce? Is it the wider society you're living in? Is it what would you define it as?
Yeah, thanks. You are right. There's many concepts and definitions, and also misconceptions about it. I think corporate social responsibility started out by being more or less the same as a charity. You know, making sure that part of the profit that you made as a company was donated to a foundation or to social services. And I think during the past years and maybe even a decade, it has developed into a much broader concept. Where as companies, Dutch companies like DSM and Unilever would say, it's not any longer an add-on that has been taken care of by a separate department in our staff. It is part and parcel of what we would call our primary process. We can only do business, we can only produce soap, coffee, and all those items if we do it in a sustainable way. If we are constantly on the lookout where we can also make sure that there's a profit in terms of sustainability. So we are here not to use and abuse the sources that the earth and the people are offering to us. We are here to make use of them and give them back. And I think, of course, there's probably lots of literature about it, and people are writing theses about it. Maybe even some of you are doing that. But basically, I think it's really a value-driven way of doing business.
Thank you. Can I take some questions?
My question concerns your visit, and how is it going to impact the way that county governments conduct their business, so that when the county assemblies at the county level where they are, make laws that are much more suitable to attracting foreign investment?
I'm not the type of person who comes here and says you have to do it in this way or that way, or this is the way that you design the law. Because I think also corporate social responsibility has core values that are universal, but the way that you implement it is very much context driven. And I do agree with you that in order to kind of promote corporate social responsible investments, you need both laws at the different levels, but you not only need laws, you also need to adhere to them and make sure that they are implemented. And I would say you also need a value-driven self-regulation in the different sectors. I strongly believe in the bargaining power of consumers. I strongly believe in, let me say, the norms and values that entrepreneurs themselves have. And I also strongly believe in the voices of citizens and of civil society. And I think working along those three lines is the best recipe, so to say, at any level to come up with corporate social responsible businesses. And I think a lot of work has been done already. For example, I'm very much engaged now in trying to improve the working conditions in the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh. And what the government of Bangladesh, of course, they have their own labor laws, which they are amending now for the better. But we also have the International Labour Organization. They have a better work program. So there's also all kinds of international standards that you can really use. The UN has guidelines on how to integrate the human rights framework in the way that you do business. So no one has to start from scratch. I think there has to be a real willingness to do business in a value-driven way, and on the part of the government there has to be also a strong will to practice what they preach, adhere to the laws, make sure that others adhere to the laws, and make sure that also that not only the larger enterprises are engaged in this, but also the smallholder farmer. Which is really a challenge, but I think it's really important that we engage with everyone in all those, production and consumer chains.
My name is Gil Haskell. I'm the Israeli ambassador here in Kenya. I find the ministerial combination of aid and trade quite fascinating and innovative, and I'm interested to hear more, if if you could elaborate, Madam Minister, how you see the interrelations between aid and trade practically in your ministry, and also technically, is it two divisions that work each on their own portfolio, or is it something that is harmonized under that under your ministry?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and it used to be only the development aid that would be hosted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now it's aid and trade, so we kindly asked the Ministry of Economic Affairs to hand over their Department of International Affairs to us, which they did. And what we are looking now in the organizational setup is, of course, the two different departments are working together under the same roof, but we're also integrating them because both ministries used to have a department that concerns itself with the sustainable business. So we're really looking how to integrate them. So that would be one, and I think that's important because it cannot be only at the ministerial level where the issues come together. Now, how does it work in practice? I think it's a real good way of looking at what we could call policy coherence. So one of the early successes, I would say, that we've been able to achieve is about the tax treaties that the Netherlands has with developing countries. There's a lot of debate going on nationally, internationally, on the tax treaties and and about tax evasion, and I'm sure you're all aware of this. The G20, the OECD has taken upon themselves to come up with, let me say, new international guidance on to prevent tax evasion. But we thought, and I thought, that the Netherlands should be at the forefront of that debate. So what we've been doing, the Ministry of Finance and myself, they needed a bit of encouragement, I have to say, but I mean, not that much encouragement that I expected. We really quite nicely and timely agreed to each other that we needed to investigate all the treaties that the Netherlands has with developing countries to see if they are fair. Some of them dated from 1977 and the world has changed. So we looked into all treaties that we have with developing countries. We are ready to renegotiate the treaty with Zambia, for example. We added anti-abuse clauses. We offered anti-abuse clauses to all the other ones. And we are finalizing our negotiations with the government of Kenya, ready to sign. And we already implemented some of the recommendations of our own study into the treaty with Kenya. Now, I would say this is really about policy coherence. The other one is, in December, we will have the ministerial meeting of the WTO, where we will discuss trade facilitation. Well, trade facilitation is really something for the good, not only for the Netherlands, but much more for developing countries. Knocking down non-tariff trade barriers is very important. Now, this is also where it comes together. On the EPAs, the Economic Partnership Agreements, I decided that the frustration on the African side, as well as on the European side, does not result in any movements. So I decided, and I offered to take upon myself the role of honest broker, bringing together the perspectives of the European Union, of which we are a part, obviously, and the African regions. And I tried to step out of my role as a member state and stepping into the role of an honest broker, basically assisting both perspectives to come together. So the first meeting was here in Nairobi yesterday or the day before yesterday, and we will have 3 more, because I think the development and the trade perspective should be equally important in those agreements, and maybe the development part should be a bit more important than the trade part in it. So I'm going to listen carefully to your perspective here in Africa, and will then bring that to the table of the European Commission. So there's many more examples, but these are, let me say, the more strategic ones, where I think it really helps that I only have to agree with myself and not with the Minister of Trade and the Minister of Development Cooperation.
Jean Diop, I'm from Deloitte. I'm kind of a mix because although I'm French, I'm working right now with Deloitte in Nairobi, but my family is based in Amsterdam.
Okay.
So,
good for them.
Yes, and good for me to be here. In that respect, I have an observation and a question. I've been looking at what's happening in Africa, basically because my roots are also in Africa, so I see the development, the growth, and also see the entry of many different larger companies and countries, for instance, China, who might have a different look at trade and aid compared to their need for resources. And I understand, I fully agree with your perspective of combining trade and aid to stimulate fully inclusive growth development. How do you argue from a European perspective and from a Dutch perspective such a message when companies like China, but there is others, are basically coming in and not plunder, but very much exploit the local resources without taking this other aspect into account?
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, this is obviously at the heart of what's been being debated in not only many boardrooms, but also many parliaments and in the court of the public opinion too, I would say. A few things about this. Now, the fact that others don't agree with you is not a reason at all to, lean back. One should be more active. So that's one. Second, what I hear, what I've been hearing the past years during my travels is that the way that, let me speak for the Dutch first, that the Dutch do business is, as you said, a competitive advantage in itself. It's part of a successful business model. Now, having said that, we should not be naive, I hear you think, and I agree with you. I think looking at China, that also the perspective of China on how to deal with natural resources, how to deal with issues of sustainability is changing as we speak. I was in China in May, and we even agreed to have a dialogue with the Chinese government on corporate social responsibility, because also in China there's a rising middle class that doesn't want to check their mobile to see the levels of pollution before they take their children to school in Beijing and Shanghai. So I think the perspective of China is changing, and I think we have to put a very powerful, different business model beside the model that we've been seen using by Chinese companies and others. To give you an example of how that can be done, one of looking at natural resources, one of the most resource-rich countries in the world is Congo, as you know. We also know that many of those resources are leaving the country totally in a totally uncontrolled way. We also know that many of those resources, for example, the tin that is in all of our mobile phones, is being exploited in a way that is, well, not sensitive to any issue at all. I mean, laborers have to work long hours, they get underpaid, their health conditions are severely deteriorating, their children who are working there, and environmentally it's not sustainable at all. Now, companies like, for example, Tata Steel, Motorola, Philips, who are not only Dutch companies, they were getting more and more uncomfortable with that kind of type of mining. And we have designed a model whereby we we are working with a few mines in the eastern parts of Congo to dig up basically conflict-free tin that is exploited in, the mine is exploited in a sustainable way. The tin is traceable, so I mean, you should have a traceable tin in your phone. You don't have it, I don't have it either, but you will have the opportunity to have it very soon, because there will be a fair phone which will be produced in December. It will come up the market. There's a waiting list. Make sure you enlist. And the tin in that phone comes out of those mines. And there's lots of resources where I think we should try and model it that way. And it will become a competitive model, because all of you will be asking Apple to produce a phone that has that kind of tin in it, which has been traceable. So this is not the only way to approach and to solve the issue, so to say, but it is one of the ways, I would say. And I think also here in Africa, in my conversation with your fellow countrymen and women, but also in other countries, again, also consumer demand is very important. People who are demanding their labor rights are very important. And I think, again, we all of us have to work together to showcase that this model has competitive advantages. Unilever is one of the best performing companies worldwide, so it can be done.
And making a huge investment. I read about 2 weeks ago, right?
Yeah.
Ambassador,
Yeah.
here in Kenya.
Yeah.
A big factory. I don't know if you wanted to just mention that. I was struck by the amount.
Good afternoon. My name is Joost French. I'm the Dutch ambassador. Unilever are planning to invest hugely in Kenya and in East Africa. Their CEO, Paul Ploumen, has been here. I think it was a month ago. He spoke to the president. He spoke with the president. He spoke with others, and they have plans to hugely invest. But these are recent plans, and we hope that they will stick to their plans in the next few years.
Welcome, Minister, to Nairobi, and I very much welcome that, because next week we will have a trade mission as well with 50 companies. I believe that we show effectively as Europeans that we believe in Kenya, and I believe it's a very effective way of showing what we want to do here. As your neighbor, geographically, I know that the Dutch are very good marketeers. That's why I believe that you as Dutch could, play an important role here. Kenya has some fine products. Kenya has roses, flowers. Kenya has coffee. We import that as Europeans, but sometimes I believe that in terms of marketing, Kenya could do so much better. For example, few people know that actually roses come from Kenya. Few people know that some of the best coffee worldwide is produced in this country. People know about Colombia coffee. They know about the quality of that product. Do you believe that in your portfolio, which I believe is very interesting, combining trade and aid, that you could do more helping the Kenyans to better market their products and to produce, to have more value out of the same product by better branding? Thank you.
It is about value addition. It's also about being competitive vis-a-vis other countries. This morning we had a very interesting round table about the flower sector, and the issue at hand was corporate social responsibility, because there have been issues in terms of sexual harassment of women workers, wages that were not up to standards, working conditions that were bad. And all involved came together this morning to discuss these issues. And of course, someone mentioned, well, if we invest largely in better labor conditions, for example, will that then not result in companies or even buyers transferring their business to other countries, be it in the region or be it in other regions? And there, of course, we spoke about the importance of not only rising the standards, but also setting the standards and again, making that part of your competitive advantages. But you also need consumers for that. You need consumer awareness also in Europe, and we need to contribute to that both in terms of branding. You should know that when the rose comes from Kenya, that it's been produced in a sustainable way. that would be wonderful. Yesterday I was at Hillside, they're called. They're exporters of vegetables, the green beans that I buy in my supermarket. And I can only see in my supermarket that they come from Kenya. And I can only see that, Albert Heijn, which is a large supermarket in the Netherlands, has been the purchaser. But I would love to see that they come from Hillside, because I know that company now, and I know that they do business in a sustainable way, and there's much more of those companies. So I think it's not only about branding Kenya as such, but I think also the different companies have to play a role, and it would be wonderful if Kenya could be on the top list of sustainable business, be it beans or flowers or coffee. One last remark maybe about that, because that's something that we discussed this morning. There's been a lot of investments in certification, in coffee, in vegetables and fruits. And there's been so much investment that I think when I stand before, when I'm in my supermarket, which I must admit I'm not the one in the household that does the shopping. Sorry, yes.
This is Kenya.
Yes. I'm never at home, obviously, so when I'm there, the least thing I want to do is go to the supermarket. So thanks to my dear husband, he does it a lot. But so you're standing in that supermarket looking at the coffee, and then you go, I don't know which one of those certificates is better, and where do they stand for? Because at one piece of a package of coffee, you might have 3 or 4. And I think we do have a joint responsibility to stop the proliferation of certification and come up with one set of common standards, so that all of us are not only the professional ones, who are engaged in this business, but that everyone understands this is Kenyan coffee. This means it's good coffee, and it's coffee that has been produced in a sustainable way. I mean, that would be wonderful. Very nice that you also are coming next week. I mean, it's proof of what I've been saying. We're not the only ones who come. Your Prime Minister, the Flemish Prime Minister and the Dutch Prime Minister also embarked on a joint trade mission to the United States, to Texas. So I might want to plant a seed in the head of my Prime Minister that it would be very nice that if we could repeat that exercise here in Kenya and in the eastern parts of Africa. So if you would like to lobby with me for that.
As I think 88 NPH is one of yours.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of these guys who are doing a lot of exciting stuff. And Tony, over to you.
Now, we've just spoken about Unilever, and we've spoken about all the things that are happening in terms of large corporate investments in Kenya. The one thing, and we've talked about one of the fantastic things Kenyans have to offer, flowers, food, agriculture, and all of that. But the one thing a lot of people haven't noticed yet is the entrepreneurial spirit and the entrepreneurs that are coming out of Kenya. In the last 2 years, I would know this because I'm in the scene, $1.7 billion has gone to entrepreneurs that are either Kenyan or in Kenya, somewhere in the world. That's a lot of money, considering if you break them up into 5 million SMEs, that's employment opportunities, that's, there could be even small companies that hire 2 to 3 people, but without that job, without that company, there wouldn't be those. And the question then becomes, it's kind of directed to you and the ambassadors, respectively sitting in front, what would it take for entrepreneurs to get into the conversation of employment and the CSR versus trade and aid conversation? Because there's a lot of creative solutions that Kenyans have created. The only reason Alikantatu is pointing at me like this is because I showed him a video of John Kerry giving us an award last week for the best application in the world on education. Those kind of things help when it comes to trying to solve problems in Africa. What's the mindset around entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship from your perspective as far as the aid, trade, and CSR conversations go?
For bringing that up. Part of the new policy is to gear also part of the budget towards entrepreneurs, but also, as I earlier mentioned, the enabling environment. So what I've been doing and actually also being criticized for that in my own country, because many people feel that aid should not be about entrepreneurship and that the private sector should cater to their needs themselves, which in a way is true, and they like to do that. But I also think that there's many issues that if you want to achieve inclusive growth, it just cannot be done without entrepreneurs. I mean, how would you think that that is possible? So we are creating a fund which is called the Dutch Good Growth Fund. In 4 years, it will be there will be 750 million euros in it, which then can be invested in 66 countries. So it's not only Kenya. By Dutch entrepreneurs wanting to go to Africa and set up business here, with a focus on small and medium enterprises. The business should be developmental relevant, which means exactly what you're saying. They have to create jobs, they have to be able to exchange and transfer knowledge, and they have to do it in a sustainable way and adhering to all criteria that you have in terms of corporate social responsible investing. So Dutch entrepreneurs wanting to partner up or start up a business in Africa, and I'm really promoting them to do it in also less fragile, less stable context, also fragile context, like in Congo, for example, or the south of Sudan, and hopefully also in Somalia. Then part of it will be invested in entrepreneurs in countries like Kenya, small and medium enterprises, because there's a huge potential there, and there's a huge problem in terms of getting those entrepreneurial activities financed, because many financial institutions, be it here or be it in other parts of the world, regard entrepreneurship in countries like Kenya, but also others, as too risky. And what I want to do is to change the perception about the risks in doing business in Africa. And the third way that we're going to promote this is to to facilitate export transactions of Dutch entrepreneurs. Again, they also need to be relevant to inclusive growth. Now, this fund will be, I think, one of the key elements to promote aid and trade to entrepreneurs directly, one could say. But there's much more that we can do. Invest in enabling environment also means, as I said, investing in the more, how would I call it, more structural institutions that you need to do business in a responsive and responsible way. But it also means investing in women entrepreneurship. It means investing in the International Land Coalition that brings together groups of people who lobby and advocate for land rights. So entrepreneurs are key. We cannot do it without them. And we really are ready to invest in what's been called the missing middle. There's lots of resources available for microfinancing, thank God. I think all of us have been working very hard on that. There is resources available for the larger companies, but there is this missing middle where we want to show with our fund that you can invest in small and medium enterprises investing in Africa and do it in a financial sustainable way also. So we will start with it in 2014, and I'm sure our embassy at that time will be ready to promote it here in the Kenyan environment. You're our strongest competitors.
My name is Avni Aksoy. I am the Turkish ambassador. Madam Minister, thank you very much for the enlightening and very, very thought-provoking address and answers to questions. I have a couple of them actually. Beginning with Somalia, we have seen that Somalis, given the slightest chance, they prosper as tradespeople. And we have seen this in many Somali diaspora communities all over the world. And this actually holds true for most African communities everywhere. That shows, in my view, in our view, that trade may be a better incentive, a better, let's say, bang for the buck for aid management. Therefore, do you have any idea, or do you make any theoretical concept development, whether how much of each euro should be given to aid as such, direct aid, and how much of the rest should be given to trade development, especially, as you just said, development of sustainable and development-specific trade. If there is any formula, it would be lovely to learn. And also, I would like to touch upon the big elephant in the room, governance. And how can we use, as the donors, how do you think we should use trade and aid, not just aid, but trade and aid, to encourage better governance in the recipient communities? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Also for being here. I mean, Turkish Airlines is the only, let me then also promote Turkey here. Turkish Airlines is, I think, the only airline that operates on a regular schedule 3 times a week, I think. Yeah, a flight to Mogadishu. And I was in Turkey last year. Actually, my government was inaugurated on, I think, the 5th of November at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And then at 8 o'clock in the evening, I flew out to Turkey for a trade mission. And so I was there for 4 days, and I could say to your country, fellow countrymen and women, that I'd been a minister longer in Turkey than in the Netherlands, which is not true anymore. And I learned that within 3 hours of, I thought this was very interesting, within 3 hours of Istanbul, you can reach 58 different countries. Can you? Yes. We are very much interested to work, obviously, with you to make the most of that for Turkey, but also for Netherlands. And I think we've been teaming up a lot since we had this year where we celebrated our friendship, 400 years friendship. 400. Yes. Yeah. So I was happy to see. Yes, yes. Well, probably we offered lots of tulip bulbs to you. That yes, we did. Yeah, we always do. No, there's no formula. Sorry, there's no formula, and maybe I should say there's no formula yet. But what I see happening is that there's lots of interest, both from yourself. From Africa, from Latin America, but also from the World Bank, for example, to see how this new policy framework is working out. So I'm sure that at one time there will be evidence-based proof of that it can work. I also continue to advocate not only for aid and trade, but also for investing in social services and in investing in issues that are not a part and parcel of that aid and trade portfolio as such, as you can imagine. For example, one of the issues that I invest a lot in is sexual and reproductive rights, for example. And of course, there's also public-private partnerships engaged in that, but it's also really investing in lobby and advocacy and services. So there's no formula yet. We are investing in public and private partnerships. And of course, I'm very happy to make sure that the policy paper that I made, where I did make choices in where to invest the money, comes to you, so you can have a look. Good governance is key. Now, what is very interesting in this aid and trade policy is that we've been working on good governance, many of us here in the room, probably all of us, from an aid perspective for decades. We've been investing in setting up local and national governance structures in the different spheres of life. And what I see happening is that by creating, by because businesses, small, medium, large businesses, are not only active in contexts that you could say are doing very well on the Doing Business Index of the World Bank, for example, but also in other contexts. They are they manage to make breakthroughs in governance issues because they demand a predictable and transparent context, because otherwise they cannot do business. If it takes 3 years and 75 government commissions to be able to get a license, then you don't set up shop in that country, you go elsewhere. And their demand for transparency and predictability has, I would say, what I've been seeing for the past year, but also been hearing from different people and organizations. So their demand for good governance is not only about economic governance, it's much more about good governance in general. So that can be, just as corporate social responsibility, can be very instrumental, I would say, to force governments into good governance. Talking about labor laws, for example, about the flower sector here, if the sector itself demands implementation of the labor laws, then that in itself is not only something that they profit from, but that the workers profit from, and that in itself is also good governance. So I think there is a kind of multiplier maybe impact that you could have. Yeah.
As somebody who has 3 daughters, believe enormously in girl power.
Good. Well, you need to. You don't have an option.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, I didn't say that.
But I can guess that.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Naga Bell. That's my Twitter. Hi, at the time. He just put me on the spot. I feel. I am an entrepreneur. I have started a company where I believe in pushing a lot of CSR initiatives, not just to be about corporate responsibility, but also getting our community involved in such a way that the project just doesn't become about a corporate coming in, but it also adds a lot of value to the people who it's bringing it to, just not about receiving and receiving. So I do have 2 questions. And when you say the entrepreneur, I've really been trying to see where my first question can come in. So my first question is are you a micro kind of a business, do you do micro trade or macro trade? Are you able to deal with, or as on your level as a minister for the foreign trade and development? And also I would like to know what you deal with in terms of what are your policy structures? Oh my God, I'm shaking. Do they have to be developmental based? Are they infrastructure based? Are those the kind of things you partner in? CSR based? What are the guidelines for partnering with the Dutch government? And also girl power. I want to hear about Mama Cash.
Okay.
Yeah. We want to be cash mamas. We want to be cash mamas here. We want to influence our society as women. So I would like to hear, just maybe you can brief us on what it was about and what you achieved with it. Thank you.
I'll answer the other ones. Yeah, Mama Cash, well, I could talk hours about Mama Cash, but I'll be very concise. But you need to know a little bit about the history of Mama Cash to understand why it's been so powerful. Mama Cash, I did not create it. It was created by a women activist, Marjan Saks, in the Netherlands. And she was very active in, let me say, the women's movement and the labor movement. And she inherited a large sum of money from her parents. And at that time, and in those circles, to be affluent was not something that you bragged about, no? It was something that you kept secret, because then you would suddenly, instead of being a socialist, you would be a capitalist, and that was not something that you would want to be. So she was for a long time, she was very silent about being this resource-rich woman. But then suddenly she realized that in her work as a women's activist, as a feminist, many opportunities in the Netherlands, but also worldwide, were not used to its full potential because there were no financial resources, because no one, or only a few people or organizations, were ready to fund for social change. So she decided that she had to approach this from a very different perspective, and that she had this wonderful and unique opportunity to use her own resources to be put to the use of the social and change movements. And that's what she did. She created Mama Cash together with 4 friends, and part of her legacy, financial legacy that she got from her parents, she invested in Mama Cash. She did not donate it, but she gave a loan for 5 to 10 years. And out of that loan, they started funding women entrepreneurs. They gave guarantees on loans because the bank didn't want to finance women entrepreneurs. They decided to fund women's groups all over the world that advocated for women's rights, lesbian rights, land rights. They funded many people, many women with travel money to come to Nairobi, to Beijing, because that was also something that you couldn't find any funding for. So I came on when they were about 15 years, they had decided they needed to take it to the next level, that not only her resources should be there, but that we should also go and fundraise. And that's what we did. So we raised funds with the MacArthur Foundation, the Carnegie Foundation, the banks, the Rabobank in the Netherlands was one of the first to assist us. The Dutch government at that time, I fundraised myself with the Dutch government, so I know how complicated but also how easy it can be, both of them, those perspectives. And Mama Cash still exists. We fund, for example, the Dutch government now funds the Urgent Action Fund that is very active here in Kenya. And Mama Cash was one of the first funders of the Urgent Action Fund. So there, you can find them on the net, on the internet, on the web, mamacash.org. They're here for you. And they're very active still, and still very close to my heart.
My name is Jane. I'm from Barclays. Thank you very much, Your Excellency. I think the CSR angle is absolutely critical for the survival of business and also of humanity at large. Now I have 2 questions. One is on the flower industry. We've seen a movement where flower farmers are starting to both participate in auctions and in the direct market. I would be interested to know, is that having an effect on the Dutch markets, and how do you see their role evolving in the next 10 years? And then my second question is, looking out from out into Kenya, where do you see the primary trade opportunities?
I don't think that we've seen massive changes yet from that trend that you are describing. I can imagine that there will be consequences, when you look at it longer term. But I also think that it's not only about the global market, it's also about the regional market. And I think that for Kenya, but also for countries like Ethiopia, there's also a world to gain in terms of servicing the growing regional market and to set up your own auction systems here. I mean, I think that is a kind of development that that will happen if I like it or not. So one has to be also straightforward about that. The trade opportunities, I would say, are many. Looking from the outside in, of course, the way that I look at it is, from my perspective, is from looking from the sectors where I would say the Dutch have a lot to offer and where we can work together a lot. Now, obviously, the agricultural sector continues to be very important, not only looking at the flower sector, but also, and not only in terms of producing, also in terms of adding value. We've been working with the Kenyan government and other public and private parties for the past 2 years, I think, on a program to import but also transfer the knowledge about high-yielding potato breeds. Is it called breeds? No, brands. What do you call it? Varieties.
Hybrid.
Yeah. No, it's not. It's varieties that create much more higher yields than your traditional varieties are doing, and that needs a lot of technological work, one could say. It needs laboratories to make sure that, you know, along the way they don't get contaminated. Now, in working together with Kenya on those issues, I think there's a lot that we can do together. Another one, obviously, is infrastructure. Someone else, you asked about infrastructure also. Infrastructure is key, I would say, to creating and enabling the environment for inclusive growth. So we're investing in that also through public-private partnerships. So that would be an area. And obviously, tomorrow I'm going to Mombasa, working on the maritime infrastructure is very important. I think we, the Dutch, we gained a lot of competitive advantage by making optimum use, and we can do it even better, I would say, in making use of geographical location that we have. The Port of Rotterdam is your entry to Europe. Schiphol Airport is basically your entry in terms of Africa, both to the Asian, the European, and the Americas. So I think we can contribute a lot to that. And of course, this is also the time to say that we are very much inviting Kenyan investors to come to the Netherlands, because this is a time in history where that balance will also, where there we will also be able to strike a balance where you can see investors coming from all parts of the world to invest in the Netherlands, where Amsterdam is also Nairobi is very nice to live, but Amsterdam and the Netherlands is a wonderful place to live.
Good evening, Your Excellency. My name is Martin Mutai. I'm from Podcast Enterprises. I have a question that touches on an issue closer home, touches on both our countries. It's not about what has been on the headlines recently, it's about trade.
Yeah.
Recently, your country banned Bira.
Yeah, cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure when you're stuck in traffic, you might have encountered some Somalian and shit.
That's a good one.
In Netherlands, in some places, apparently you can go into a cafe and smoke a blunt, maybe some brownies, and when you're sipping coffee. Mira is a mild stimulant, so I don't see why you ban Mira while it's legal in your country.
Yeah, good for you. Right.
Maybe you can explain on that a little.
Yes, I can. We did ban quad, importing quad to the Netherlands. And I also think that there's lots of different opportunities for the Kenyans and the Dutch to work together in the field of agriculture besides quad. So I do think that there's no love lost there, but again, lots to gain. We have a very, very Dutch policy towards smoking pot, actually, it's called gedogen. I don't even think there's an English word for it. We kind of tolerate it. So it's regulated and tolerated. Now, it's regulated because you can smoke it in certain places. Those are called coffee shops. You can drink coffee, but no one does it, actually. So, and also very interestingly, you're not allowed to smoke inside because then we also ban smoking cigarettes from public places. So it's getting very complicated. But what we traditionally, we've been very tolerant, too tolerant, I would say, towards the use of what we call soft drugs. And in the 70s, marijuana, when you look at it like objectively in terms of what's in it. You could call it a soft drug, but over time, the ingredients of the marijuana have become much more strong, you could say. So there's lots of issues around health, specifically with our younger population. There are young people who smoke pot in the mornings and are not very, concentrating very well at school. So it's being regulated. You can only, in the coffee shop, you buy a certain amount that is very limited. That's only for your own use. There's talk about how to combine regulation and tolerance. It's a big issue in our country. Now, of course, someone has to, the pot doesn't, come out of nothing, it doesn't rain from heaven, doesn't come from heaven. So there is, of course, I'm not going to walk away from these issues, there's a lot of tension on that you can only purchase very small amounts, but someone has to deliver larger amounts to be able to, sell the smaller amounts. And that is what we would call, talking about governance, a semi-legal. So it's tolerated, and we think that the effects on the health of chewing kort are that severe, also affecting parts of the population, that we thought that if we can prevent people from risking their health, we should do it. And by putting a strong limit on the amount of marijuana that you in a pot that you can sell, we try to achieve the same results, basically. So yeah, but I know many Somali people in the Netherlands. We have a strong and a big Somali Dutch community in the Netherlands. Many of them have the Dutch nationality, and I was greeted in my own language at Mogadishu airport, which was also very nice. Yeah, I know people have not been happy, but I do think that as a government we also have a responsibility to protect, basically.
And share your thoughts so openly with us, and we are all deeply grateful to you. And we sincerely hope that that the world, which is so multilateral now, and that the Netherlands and Kenya have a strong relationship going forward, as we have already. And we're proud to have you here, Madam Minister. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure to be with you.